Hello everyone, in today's video I'm going to discuss fluency. This is one topic that I have discussed in many other videos as well, and if you have not watched those videos, I want you to check our channel to find the videos about fluency in pronunciation, how you can score 90 in speaking, and some factors which can determine your fluency. In today's video, I'll be talking in particular about why some people get a very low score in fluency. What does getting 10 in fluency mean, or getting 30 in fluency mean, or getting 60 in fluency mean? If you are getting low score in fluency, what can you do to improve your score in the next test? These are the topics, these are the ideas we'll be discussing in today's video. Let's get it started. So you may have seen some of your friends getting only 10 in fluency sometimes. I have also seen some of our students getting 10. And because of that, I did a little bit of research on how some people could get just 10 in the test when they have to speak for at least 20 minutes. If you speak for 20 minutes, at least that means you have said something, and that means they have to score you for whatever you have said. So how is it possible for anyone to get just 10? As I said, if you have already spoken for 20 minutes, how is it possible for you to get just 10 or even 15 or 20? Because that means you are getting around 2 or 3 in IELTS, which is quite impossible. And I have also seen people who can speak really well getting this kind of a score. So what could be the reason, and how can we get over that? Let's have a look at that as well. One of the common reasons for only 10 in fluency could be the microphone position. It's quite important that you have checked your microphone and it is able to pick your voice. Although in most of the cases, these microphones have no problem at all and they are quite sensitive. But because the same microphones are used by many people throughout the day in a center, there can be some technical issues with these microphones. So it's quite important that you check your microphone first and you put them in appropriate places. Some people ask me, what is the best position for the microphone? Then the best position is the one that I'm showing you on this diagram here. It should be pointing towards the corner of mouth, and it should be around 2 to 3 centimeters away from your mouth, which means around 1 or 2 fingers away from your mouth. Once you have kept the microphone in the appropriate position, the second thing you need to check is whether there is any static noise in the microphone or not. Static noise in the microphone usually indicates some technical issues with the microphone. If in your test you find that your microphone is making weird kind of noise, then you should raise your hand and let the invigilator know immediately. You cannot wait until the end of the test, because then it will not be registered as a complaint or issue. If you get only 10 in the test later on, you can then raise that issue one more time and tell that it could be because of the issue that you had raised in the beginning of the test. However, once you have checked all of these things and you have found that the microphone is all right and you can hear yourself clearly and there is no issue with your recording, the next thing you need to do is you should not touch the microphone after that. Unnecessarily playing with the microphone might cause unseen problems. And that's something we would always want to avoid. Another thing is, of course, most of you already know this, you should try to speak as clearly and naturally as possible. Now, this is one thing which can be quite difficult for some of you to decide. How can I know whether I'm speaking clearly and naturally or not? Because I speak the best I can. But in some cases, we can actually be our own judge. We can examine how we are doing ourselves as well. As an example, I can stand in front of a mirror and see how I'm speaking. While speaking, if I'm not making that many hand gestures, or if my facial emotion is not changing much, that means most likely I'm not speaking naturally. Or maybe because of the stress, I'm trying to read from the screen rather than speak naturally as people usually do. Another issue that people often talk about is the background noise. In some of the centers, you may have noticed this. Some people almost shout in the exam. Because in many institutions, students are told that if they speak louder, then they get more score. Because of this, some students really try to shout to get more score, and that actually distracts and disturbs other students. If you face the same problem, then immediately raise your hand and let your invigilator know about the problem. In many cases, these invigilators will approach those students and will request them to speak in a lower volume, and you perhaps will be able to speak without much distraction. So these are some of the things that you must do if your score in fluency was quite low as 10 to 20. But what if your score was around 20 to 40? Score of 20 to 40 usually means there were improper pauses in your answer. This means you are not pausing in appropriate places, or maybe you're pausing in places where you did not have to, or maybe you're pausing for too long. or maybe you're hesitating a lot, or you're repeating whatever you're saying, or you are not completing the ideas once you started. If this happens, then usually your score will be between 20 to 40 in fluency. Again, you can take help of your instructor in the institute you are training, or you can ask your friends to listen to you and find out how many times you hesitated, you paused, or you had repetition and false start. Again, you can record yourself and do it yourself too. Remember, more than one long pause in your exam can severely reduce your score. If you have no idea about this, please watch the video about fluency in pronunciation that I had uploaded around a month ago. If your score is stuck at 20 to 40, what are the things you can do? Let's have a look at that as well. If your fluency score is between 20 to 40, the first thing you should try is chunking. What it means is divide the sentence into smaller components, into smaller parts. This is called chunking or blocking or creating a group of related words. When people speak in English, they usually speak out one particular idea at one time, and these ideas come together to create a sentence. As an example, when I'm saying, please switch off all electronic devices when you're attending a conference session, there are some groups of words here. For example, please switch off is one group, all electronic devices is another group, while attending conference session is another group. Why they are in three groups? Because the first one, please switch off, gives me the instruction. The second one, all electronic devices, tells me about what I need to switch off. And the last one, while attending the conference session, tells me when. So mostly the groups of words in a sentence tend to answer the questions like what, where, when, and so on. So when you're reading a sentence, try to see which part of the sentence answers the question what, which part answers the question where, which part answers the questions why, and so on, and take help of that to chunk your sentences into groups of words and try to say one group at a time with small pauses between the groups. This will help you to improve your pausing and also make sure that you take pauses when there are full stops and commas and other punctuation marks appropriately. Pacing is really important. Many people have false idea that speaking faster increases their score, and it's not true. Speed has nothing to do with your fluency score. Speed only has to be appropriate and has to be natural. It does not have to be faster or slower. You can speak at a natural speed because that's more comfortable as well. And when people are speaking at a comfortable speed, they are also easier to understand for others. Do not change your speed unless there is any problem with this. If you are too slow, in that case you may have to speed up, and if you are too fast, because of which it's difficult to understand you, or let's say the understandability gets compromised, in such cases you may have to speed yourself down. Okay, so this was about people who were getting between 20 to 40. What about those people who get around 40 to 60? Is it possible for someone to get more than 79 if they are scoring between 40 to 60? There have been occasional cases in our center where people have scored less than 60, and despite that they have got the score of 90 in speaking. I went through more than 1,000 students who had scored more than 79, and I found one pattern there. Most students who had scored more than 79 had a fluency in pronunciation score of more than 60 most of the times. Which means if your score is between 40 to 60, it's a good idea to work on your fluency and improve it. And the same applies to pronunciation as well, but we'll talk about pronunciation in some other videos. So what is the major reason people get their fluency score in the range of 40 to 60, and what they can do to get rid of this problem? So 40 and 60 usually means there were occasional hesitations while these people were speaking, or maybe there was one or two long pause. Another reason people get this score is because of the unstructured approach. What does it mean? This is something I'm going to explain in detail shortly. And the other reason is lack of familiarity or lack of practice. When you have no idea what kind of questions are asked, in what order they are asked, how many questions will be asked, and how you are supposed to answer the question, or how you are scored, in such cases as well, you are likely to get less score. So let's talk about all of these problems and their solutions as well. Structured approach. What does it mean? Structured approach means using some kind of templates. Templates which make your answer more predictable. Because of that, you don't have to think much. Being non-native speakers, sometimes we really need to think about what we are going to say, and sometimes we need to think about the equivalent word for what we are trying to say in English, and that requires time. Being a non-native speaker myself, I understand this quite well. But one thing that I know is if I'm in a familiar situation, then I don't need to do this much and I can speak more fluently. And what that means is, if I create a system or format, what I'm going to say is predictable or in a definite order all the time, then I can speak more fluently. As an example, when you are doing describe image, if every time your answer starts by saying what image you are looking at, and then you talk about what information you see on the image, and then you discuss the most important information you see on the image, and perhaps why you think that is important information, and give the conclusion, and follow this in all images, then it becomes easier for you to speak more fluently. So in our center, we provide students with templates because we believe that it helps them to become more fluent. It takes away the pressure of forming the sentences all the time or getting the appropriate vocabulary all the time. And because of this, they can speak more naturally and they can focus more on delivery rather than on the content part, on structuring their answer. The other thing that I mentioned was familiarity and practice. So what breeds familiarity and how should you practice? It's quite easy to get familiar with this test these days because right now, if you go out and start searching for the mock test for PTE, not only you can find the mock test designed by Pearson itself, but you can find hundreds of other mock tests designed by other institutions as well. Many of these mock tests are quite useful and quite well designed, but some of them are not actually structured as the questions are asked in the exam, so stay away from them. Otherwise, most of them are quite good. Practicing this mock test can help you to understand the exam format. Not just that, some of these mock tests are scored as well, and that score can also give you a rough estimate of how much you might get in the actual test. Although you should not overly rely on them because nobody knows the actual algorithm used by Pearson, so most of the scoring is only presumptive. But still, it can give you some idea and it can help your instructor to understand how you are doing or where you are struggling. And in case of Pearson's test, there are a lot of past questions available as well. And if you do these past questions, you can get familiar with the exam difficulty level as well as understand what kind of questions you need to answer and what skills you might require to answer those questions. So it's always a good idea to do the past questions as well. Now, in our case, we have more than 3,000 past questions, which we have designed in the way they are asked in the exam so that students not only practice the past questions, but also get familiar with these questions and learn the skills to answer these questions. Let's talk about one interesting thing called connected speech. When people speak, they don't speak one word at a time, but rather they speak a series of words at one time, and then another series of words, and then another series of words, and they complete the sentence and then start another sentence in a similar manner. And this idea of putting 2-3 words together and reading them out in one breath is what we call connected speech. I know some students try to read out each word separately because they feel that way they will be able to pronounce the word more clearly and will get more score in pronunciation, but that compromises their fluency score at the same time, and it's not a good idea. Although pronunciation is important, but it can be improved without pronouncing each word separately as well. In fact, connected speech is much more important than pronouncing each word correctly and separately. So what is connected speech? Connected speech has many aspects, and we cannot discuss all of them in this video, but let me give you an idea of what it actually is and how it can help you in the test. The first way we can connect our speech together is by linking. That means when you're saying get out, don't say get out, but rather say get out, because here you can see the consonant T of the first word is merging with the vowel O of the next word. And this is a very common practice in English, to fuse the last letter of one word with the first letter of another word so that the speech becomes continuous. And this is something you need to practice. If you have a habit of breaking the words into parts, then you should work on that and then make sure that your words are being pronounced together so that your speech is connected. Another thing is consonant clusters. Now, I'll not get into the details of consonant clusters, but let me give you some idea about what they are. When you're reading this sentence that I'm showing you on the screen, you might feel a little difficult to say the first word, scientists. And if you try to pronounce all the letters there, it will compromise your smoothness. And you'll end up saying, scientists have discovered. So after I had to stop. Consonant clusters means when 2 or more than 2 consonants come together, you can skip one or more than one of them. In this example, rather than saying scientists, if I say scientists, then I can speak more smoothly. Scientists have discovered. So this way, for example, when I'm saying, let's say, cheetah is the fastest animal in the world. Cheetah is the fastest animal in the world. Fastest. It will stop me at T. But if I say fastest, then it will be more smooth. Let's try that. Cheetah is the fastest animal in the world. So you can see yourself when I say fastest and when I say fastest, I'm smoother while saying fastest. So that is another example of consonant clusters and connected speech. Now another example is something called assimilation, where we transform the sound. As an example, when I'm saying sandwich, you can see the word sand actually slows me down because I'm not transforming the and part as I should have. And actually will be pronounced as M here. And if I say sandwich, you can see my speed gets better. There are many examples of connected speech, and even on YouTube, you can find several of those examples and videos explaining connected speech. And you must learn how to make yourself smoother by connecting ideas together and how you should transform the sound or replace some of the sounds while doing this. This exercise will help you a lot to become smoother. Remember, we are not trying to sound more like natives, but we are just trying to pronounce the words correctly, and while doing that, we do not want to lose our fluency. So these are some of the things that I have shown you in today's video. I hope they were useful. If you have any questions about what we discussed today, please write in the comments. And if you like this video, please hit the like button. And if you do not want to miss similar videos in the future, please hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon. Until my next video, have a good time.